we're getting into gaming. You are part of the PS I Love You XOXO. I appreciate the fact that you are very critical. I hate when people who listen to podcasts that are centered on one console hate when the hosts are critical about that one console, because I'm like, who wants to listen to a console of just a bunch of fanboys? Like that's boring. And so
Mhm.
going into the next question, I want to know your opinion on after E3, we still have no idea what PlayStation has cooking up. Where do you feel like PlayStation, Xbox, Nintendo, where do they stand today? I know not all of them, not all three of them kind of compete exactly at the same thing, but we kind of have an idea where they all are as of right now. And so coming out of E3, Xbox, I don't know if you would agree. I think they had a banger of a show.
Yeah.
Nintendo kind of it's here or there for some people. It's been mixed, and then PlayStation,
Okay.
we don't know anything. We don't know anything, and so I kind of want to know for you. And I guess we can start with PlayStation. Where do you feel like PlayStation stands amongst the big three?
I think it might still be number one just because it has such a rich history of dominating the market. And the PS5 is a great, console. I think the DualSense is brilliant. I think they still have the IP power, and that's undeniable. I do think like today, like this exact specific day, I feel like there might be a little, like in a way, an edge to Xbox, just because I think I think they have more stuff already set up, and I think they're really hitting Game Pass hard. I think the XCloud stuff is brilliant. Just conceptually, I still have not tried it out myself. I've heard mixed reviews as far as how well it works, but
Yeah.
I think they're just like really hitting hard. I don't think it'll be enough to ultimately like best PlayStation, just because we do know that God of War is down the pipeline. We know Horizon's in the works. We know Ghostwire Tokyo is coming down, but we also know those are all like more like 2022 things. So it's like, okay, if we look at like this year, I think it'll probably depend on like how Halo comes out. Like if Halo's a banger and they have like, this other like indie powerhouse element. So when we think of indie, it's like, okay, they have Death's Door, but like PlayStation had Chicory.
Yeah.
I personally
Yeah,
think Chicory is
it
probably better
did.
than Death's Door. So it's like,
Oh,
it's
nice.
a little bit of a, yeah, I haven't finished Death's Door though yet. Maybe maybe that'll change. But so yeah, like I might still give it to PlayStation just because of how much they have going for them. They still did have Ratchet this year and then Returnal and other big titles. So I probably would give it to PlayStation, but I think there's a really strong argument for Xbox, at least at this exact moment. And then there's like just nothingness. And then there's Nintendo, which I love. I love Nintendo. They're my favorite of the big three always. And the console the company I've been with the most in my gaming history. But I mean, I jokingly, non-jokingly asked on the Min-Max show when we just recorded earlier today, I'm like, well, because we're talking about Pokemon Unite, like whether or not I'm going to play it. I'm like, I guess I'll try it, just to see. But I'm like, yeah, what else am I going to play on my Switch? Tell me what's good to play on my Switch. I'd love to know. And everyone's like, Mario Golf. And I'm like, exactly. There's nothing out here.
Yeah.
Golf is whatever. Snap was honestly pretty disappointing. Bravely Default 2 was fire, but like, we got like that old Zelda game and that old Mario game. It's a weak year. Those bad Nintendo online games,
Yeah.
And sure, there's Dread and there's Pokemon coming down the pipeline. And I know some people were really hyped on WarioWare and things, but I mean, it's kind of a weak time for Nintendo.
Well, yeah, it's like the time that every like dedicated Switch player is like needing to use to like burn through their backlog, and probably aren't still, but so we can still all complain about it later. But
in regards
to wisely, right?
In regards to where they stand, I think for me personally, what's been interesting is there's no doubt about it. Xbox has just had such great communication, and they're done so well by making themselves look like they're ahead. Like you can make yourself externally look good, but it's been one of those things where I've been very much so in the PlayStation ecosystem for a long time. I got the Xbox Series X, and that was the first Xbox console I ever owned. And I think it was the Game Pass itself, which would kind of sold me on it to where I'm like, you know what? I'm going to get this console, and then I don't have to pay for any other game, just this subscription from here on out. And then PlayStation would be my main console. That's what I told myself. But it wasn't until I got both of them. And then I'm like, well, the Xbox has become my main console, and PlayStation has become my exclusive console. And I thought it was going to work vice versa. But it's just interesting how where they are today. And I know there was that recent report, and I know Video Games Chronicle report on it, how in June the series Xbox sold had a highest grossing US console sales in June. And to me, when I first saw that, I was like, oh, that's cool. But I feel like with where we're at right now, still kind of post pandemic kind of thing, and shortages of chips and everything like that, I can't look at that and be like, oh, that's great. Because in my mind, I'd be like, well, maybe you just got more chips this time around than PlayStation, and you sold more consoles. Maybe. Do you kind of look at it in that way? And
And in a sense, I mean, I think I more so think of it as also they have like, and I don't remember offhand if it's specified Series X versus S. I think the fact that they have two SKUs that have very different use cases is
right,
like really powerful. And PlayStation also has two SKUs, but it's like, do you want the disc or not the disc? It's like it's not really. I
right,
mean, one's cheaper, so there's that, but I don't think anyone is like, I don't know, really like thinking about it, or you wouldn't upgrade. For instance, you would never upgrade from like the disc-less to the disc one. Like it's not
right,
the same kind of thing. It's like
right,
one's missing something and one has something that
Yeah.
you might not need. Those are like
right,
the two options versus Xbox. It's like,
Yeah.
okay, well, we have like a really powerful console or a less powerful, but really cute looking console. And then we have like all these other things going on. So, yeah, but I think those things are always like a little bit up and down. I think it's interesting too. When we think about like, you ask like who's kind of in the lead or who's the winner, like sales does play a factor in that, but only to a degree. Like
right,
you look back at the Wii era and everyone talks about how dominant the Xbox 360 was and things like that. But it's like, okay, you wouldn't be like, oh, the Wii's the winner of that generation that it was in. Maybe you would because it was really popular, but also it's like, okay, it sold a lot, but also you look at all these other elements and then you look at how the Wii U did and kind of how it changed Nintendo's trajectory or public perception, maybe in some ways for like a more casual market that ended up maybe hurting them in the long run. Then they kind of fix that again. So
right.
you kind of have to wait for things to sort of play out. I think it's anyone's game minus Nintendo's, I guess, in a way. Though again, they're kind of catering to a really different market.
Oh, yeah.
Always. I still think they compete. I think it's kind of silly when we say, oh, it's not point. There's no point in comparing them because they like took themselves out of the equation. I'm like, well, they took themselves out by not being powerful in their hardware, and also like that can be to the detriment as we're seeing like as advances happen more and more on the Xbox Sony side. The gap is just kind of cataclysmic, and I don't know what that means for like the future of the company or where I play my games or how that
Right.
changes, you know, all of those things. But
Right.
yeah.
And I want to know your opinion on this. After Ratchet and Clank came out, as of this moment, we have no idea of an exclusive PS5 game. We all the games that are coming out as of now, which are going to be coming in the future, which is Horizon Forbidden West, the God of War that's supposed to be coming out, Gran Turismo, they're all cross-gen. And I think the last game that we have that's console exclusive as of right now, because like things could change, is Ratchet and Clank. And to you, I know we've had that quote from Jim Ryan where we believe in generations, and then it's like, well, we're starting to get rumors of games going back. Like I know there was the idea of Demon Souls being ported back for PS4, and for Horizon Forbidden West is, I think it's been said that was always a PS4 game, but then it's kind of being bumped to a PS5. And I think the greater one that kind of is a bit more disappointing to me, and I use disappointing lightly. I understand their whole strategy, but disappointing in regards to the fact that God of War is possibly cross-gen. Do you have any problem with some of these games being cross-gen? Like, do you feel like, oh, I got a PS5 and now I'm like, I could have played all these games on the PS4 actually? Does that bother you or not?
Only to a degree. I mean, I think it bothers me in the sense that I think the thing that bothers me more than that is how much Sony could get away with that messaging in like the public eye of being like, we believe in generations, and they're like, never mind. I'm like, Xbox would have got so clowned on that, and like from like people that I follow who follow me or whatever, I'm like, y'all would have clowned Xbox on this, and you didn't burn Sony on it because I don't know, some of y'all liked it, and I'm very critical of Xbox as well because like there's plenty of things to be critical of. They've had a lot of struggle in establishing themselves in the modern era, in terms of IP power and all that. But they've, made a lot of strides with like purchasing studios and doing all these other things. I think they had a great E3, etc. But like, I'm like, some of y'all just really enjoy punching up on Xbox, but like, you don't keep that same energy. So like, make it make sense?
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's a little disappointing just from the sense of, as much as I don't really want to lean into the language of like, oh, cross-gen holds back games. I mean, I think it's more so if we want to like flip the script a little bit. It's like you can get excited about the potential of what they're trying to do with the game if you know it's going to be a current gen, next gen, like a PS5 game and not a PS4 one, because it means they're like pushing to a degree that they had to like leave the other one behind.
Right.
So in that sense, it's kind of a bummer, but like you said, it makes sense. And I think the beginning of a console, you're always getting scammed. It's almost never worth it to get a console at launch.
Yeah.
So I'm like, that's cool. Like I came here at launch because I want to be part of, the vibe of it all. And obviously there's always like the argument of like who has the best launch lineup. And it's always like sort of kind of weak. Like sometimes you do get like a banger, like the Switch had Breath of the Wild, but you can also argue so did the Wii U. So was it really like, it was an exclusive game either.
Exactly.
But it didn't end up mattering because you still, to me, it matters more about having new things to play on the console, even if those new things are available on the PS4. And I think that's what like was distinct about the PS5 launch and the Xbox Series X launch. Like I had both those consoles at launch. And when I got my PS5, I knew exactly what I was playing. I like went through, I didn't get through all of it. It was Astros, we had Demon Souls, we had Spider-Man, we had Bug Snacks. I'm probably forgetting at least what the Pathless, I think was around that era too, I feel like. And then I booted up my Xbox and I was just like, I guess I'll browse Game Pass. And like that was like kind of an awkward answer. Like I know that's their thing, but it meant that like if you went on an Xbox show that week, what are you playing? Oh, I'm really like Watch Dogs looks really good. It's like that's not exciting. No one hyped for that experience. So I think that's what's more important than having exclusives, at least this early on. It's just having like cool things to get excited about, or use cases of the hardware, like with the Death Stranding, director's cut, kind of using the DualSense, things like that can at least make it feel enticing.
Right.
For sure. Or like my own use case was like I completely skipped over PS4 generation. So I'm like PS5, PS Plus collection, literally like God of War, Bloodborne, like Uncharted. I don't even remember what else on there, but it's like, yeah, you just get those for free. Like, oh, okay, that makes perfect sense then. Because I honestly had thought about like picking up the PS4 to play those games. I'm like, it's gonna be hard to get. It's gonna be expensive. And then they're like, yeah, we'll give those to you for free if you can get a PS5. I'm like, okay.
Yeah, and it could be. You could argue the idea of like, okay, well, because if you kind of compare the launch lineup for PS5 compared to PS4 launch lineup, you can't argue it's better, and just in regards to the quality of games of what you're getting, and some people can also make the argument, and I don't like saying this sometimes, but you can make the argument that the PS Plus collection has much better games within that small quantity compared to the whole thing of Game Pass. Like you can make that argument, but at the same time, it's different from person to person. There's probably someone who's diehard Halo and just thinks Uncharted sucks, and I gotta respect that. But I want to know. So right now, we have no idea what PlayStation has cooking up. There's rumors of PSX, which would be so dope, but we don't know. What do you want to see them do this year? They've been kind of like the cool kid that are like, we're too cool for E3, and so they've tried to do state of plays, but I think everyone kind of started comparing them to what Nintendo Directs were, and Nintendo Directs would sometimes come out with some bangers, and people were wanting something like that from state of plays, and that unfortunately has not happened for me personally. So do you think they need to come out with like a PSX or some sort of conference, air quotes, conference, like more than a state of play, something where they come out on a stage and they're like, this is what we have coming for 2022. Like, what would you want to see them do?
Yeah, I think they need to have some bigger deal showcase. And it's funny you bring up the Nintendo side, which like Nintendo is very much the company that established like direct conversations with their consumers as a point of excitement. Like, the little snap, like you live for it. You love to hate it. You wait for the next one. You're like, when are we going to get the next real one? We got the Smash Bros. One, but when's the next, people will do like, and this is part of just Nintendo fandom is very intense, like 200 days since the last direct. Like it gets crazy. I'm in a lot of like Facebook groups and stuff of people really like looking and looking forward to it. But PlayStation doesn't quite have that established because they haven't done like as many or made it quite the same cadence. So they've borrowed some things from the formula, like how they'll have like, oh, this is a state of play, but it's like the Horizon one, or this one's like basically this game, and we're looking at other stuff. I feel like at some point they need the bigger thing, or else it's kind of like what's going on. That's what I would expect and want from them. I think PSX would be really cool. I think it'd be cooler if it was like back for real, like back in person, but then you have to wait for like the world to stop
Right.
re-toxifying itself with
Yeah.
COVID. So that'll probably take a long time.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would love to see something like that. I think obviously bringing like the heavy hitters in, bring a few quote unquote easy wins. Obviously not easy to make, but just like the Last of Us rumored remake,
Yeah.
if that's gonna happen, kind of rolling that out. As like a Jack and Daxter fan, I do think it'd be cool if they did something for the 20th anniversary, which is December 4th. You know, I don't know if they're gonna do anything. I don't think they're really gonna maybe put out a tweet or something. You know, I'll be celebrating in my own way, so that's
Yeah.
fine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, stuff like that, and like I'd love to see more indie stuff too. I mean, I think especially after the whole thing came out about like, oh, Sony doesn't support indie studios and like
Right.
a way they're really behind on other things. I think it'd be one just like a good move from like a good faith side of things, and then two, I just am a big fan of indies and indies on PlayStation, so I'd love to see something like that. I think it'd be cool even to get more quality of life updates in terms of how the store functions or how like the like app functions or anything like that.
Right.
Like I see a lot of those posts from the Xbox side of things, but obviously PlayStation has PlayStation blog, but I haven't seen a lot of those kind of details. And I think stuff like that could be cool, even like reorganizing how the card system works, or like, you know, revamping game help, or kind of talking about like what is your plan for game help, because like they don't really like have any details on that.
Right.
Like little stuff like that I think could go a long way. And mostly I just want to see Stray, which is that game where you play as a cat.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I'm actually curious, is there like specifically about indies, like, you know, obviously the storefront stuff, but is there anything like from a larger strategy standpoint you think PlayStation should do in terms of indies?
I'd love to see something that was like a little bit more couched, like sort of like how there's idea to Xbox. I think it could be cool. Or like there's like the Indie World Showcase. I think having an angle like that could be cool from like a gamer standpoint or a consumer standpoint. But certainly a lot of the issues that developers are speaking to are so behind the scenes that I don't know. I don't think I'd ever know they were fixed or not fixed unless I end up doing investigative journalism pieces, digging into, hey, 6 months later, where are we on these issues, or 1 year later. I'd obviously love to see those things fixed. It would be really cool if they were like transparent on that, but I don't think they're going to be, because it's like, hey, you know how everyone has these negative comments? Let me address them. Like that's not going to happen. But obviously, support of indies goes a lot deeper than, you know, what we see on a storefront or at a presentation. And I feel like, you know, all of the developers who spoke about their experiences was a really like stark reminder for me, at least, that okay, what does it really mean to support any developers, and what kind of, you know, support do they need to really be successful, that I don't necessarily see.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Do you feel like with the exiting of Sean Layden, and we knew that like one of the last things that he was talking about or what was being said was that he believed that we need to start making shorter games more often. Um, and we kind of I feel like a little bit of a blueprint of that was Miles Morales. Um, and I some people can be like, oh, that's like almost practical. You can kind of relate that to the infamous DLC that came for the PS4. You can kind of compare the two of them as like not large but small DLCs. But I kind of feel like Miles Morales was kind of a small bit of that of his influence in that. I don't read into that because I don't know. I don't talk to Sean. I mean, last time we talked was never. But
Never.
do you
Same.
do you think, you know, we have a very different PlayStation. Um, they're very button up, and we don't see PlayStation commenting on a director from Xbox. You know, like we see Xbox, and then Corey Barlog comments, and then Xbox responds. Like that fun side that they're having. Phil Spencer is showing that he's for the gamers. They have such a great presence. Do you feel like PlayStation needs to bring that back a little bit, or do you think they're fine being button up? We're the premier console, but hey, we just need to kind of show you what we have. We're holding the back. Let us just show you what we have, but we're still going to continue being button up. Do you think they can get a pass with that, or do you think they need to loosen up a bit and just have more character?
I think there's like a bit of an in between there. I mean, I think a little character goes a long way, and I think something like bringing back PSX would be a great moment of like highlighting the fun and the unity of like the PlayStation community and all of that. I mean, they have elements of interaction on that level, but it is still very like stiff. Like, these are the photos of the week, you know,
Yeah,
like
yeah,
this is the best screenshot. Like, no shade to that movement either. I think that's cool, but you know, I don't think they necessarily need to be exactly like Xbox, because I don't know if they could pull that off either. Like, few companies can pull off, you know, the little like monkey puppet meme without seeming like kind of cringy.
Right.
But I think with Xbox it works. Like, they're so like, and but the thing is, you have to be down to earth and humble when you're behind. You know what I mean? Like, you can't be. Yeah, it's true. Like, PlayStation's stuffy and snobby because they've kind of earned that right to be. Now, whether or not it's right or not is up for debate.
Right.
But they've always been the fancy, sleek tech art house people who was like, oh, we're doing art, but like also it's kind of like the art you've seen for a long time because we have very established franchises. But you know, like, they're bringing out like Xbox isn't bringing out a string quartet, and that's fine. Like, I don't think Xbox needs to get bougier with their messaging either. I think, you know, there's a little bit of an in between for like all of that stuff to like meet halfway. I think they could use more like community stuff and fun stuff, and I think having more figureheads who can be out there is beneficial. I mean, at least it's something I like as like a consumer and as like a critic and a person in the space. Like, I know even with Nintendo, like, Reggie was so much more of a persona than like Doug Bowser is, and that doesn't mean Doug Bowser is worse at his job or anything. I think that's the other thing too. Like, sometimes we kind of lean into that default American, can I get a cup of coffee with him? I don't know, something about him, like, he just doesn't feel like, it is nice to have people that are personable, and I think you do need a level of personality and charisma to really like drive a company, but at the same time I think sometimes we put a little bit too much weight in that as far as what it means for being able to do your job well.
Yeah. And maybe like Doug Bowser and Jim Ryan are that internally, you know, like, and you know, because maybe like that's what actually drives their business and their company, and they're like, you know what, we don't like the numbers show we don't need to worry about, you know, pleasing the community as long as we just focus on the market and make great games. But like you said, it's just so much more enjoyable to have Phil Spencer go on Gamecast and literally just be like chill for a whole hour and it be like super enjoyable to hear. Yeah, it's just more fun to be a fan for that kind of community, that kind of company.
So I want to have fun for a little bit. Let's say, with our imaginations, the fall comes. There's a PSX live event, live via virtual. We're sitting at home. Obviously, let's get realistic here, guys. Okay, we're sitting at home. We're watching.
We're getting realistic in the imagination. It's like there's still COVID in my imagination.
Oh no! It's let's say I want to know what you think would be a good intro, and what would be a good outro to the show.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I had this conversation like not too long ago on PS I Love You. And I remember looking at the doc and being like, oh, some of y'all took my answers and I have to come up with other stuff. And then I get judged when I talk about Final Fantasy VII Remake. I'm like, the truth is some of y'all took God of War. Okay. But yeah, as far as, oh God, intro and outro, what was I'm trying to think of what, now I'm trying to like remember what I said on that episode. But I mean, I don't know if I can nail down intro, outro off the top of my head, but some things that did stick out to me were, of course, you know, God of War, Horizon. I do think having like an indie darling in there is good. And I do think Final Fantasy VII Remake Part B, you know, whatever they call it, would be like a really heavy hitter, even though I don't know how far into like development they actually are on that. I mean, they had like I always forget if it's Intergrade, whatever.
I think Intergrade.
Y'all know what it is. Yeah. Interstellar, whatever it was. Like, they had that intermission. That little episode came out, which was so weird to have like the side of part of a series that is one game, but we're not going to talk about it. It's okay. I think something with that would be really dope. Yeah, those are kind of like the heavy hitters that stick out to me. I do think it'd be fun to, as much as like, you know, I don't need Jack and Dexter to come back because I think it had 3 and it was fine. I do think it'd be fun to have like, you know, a remake or maybe like just some type of celebration of things like that. Certainly Sony has shown over the past that how they keep their franchises alive is through like reiterating on it and bringing it back. They don't really do backwards compatibility in the same way. Instead, they're just like, we're gonna touch this up and then like kind of repackage it, and that's how we continuously reintroduce people to this franchise. It's like why we keep getting Shadow of the Colossus over and over again, even though I'm like, I've never enjoyed it. Why do you keep giving me this game? Sorry, I know Blessing loves that game, but like that's how they do it. So I figured they'd probably have something like that in there too, just to kind of like continue that going along. Maybe Last of Us stuff.
Yeah. Adam, what do you want to see intro and outro?
I think for either of them, I don't know which would be, but we'll say intro. I would love to get the announcement that Blue Point is working on MGS1 remake.
Why would you steal
Uh,
that, dude?
because it just goes around the rest of the the kind of funny crew stole all of Janet's answers, and I'm going to steal yours
Oh
now because
no.
I think it's just one, it's very likely. Two, I literally have been hearing a lot of people talk about it lately and how even just the original game holds up really well, and I'm like, man, I really want
Sure
to. This is
does.
the time because I've never
Sure does.
played any of them, and so I'm like, I would I would love for them to go ahead and announce that, so then I just don't have to be like, "Okay, do I play the, like, original first one?" No, I'll just start with the new experience, and that'll be great. Um, so I think that would be the intro, and I'm trying to think if I'm gonna play it safe or go crazy on the outro. Um,
Dude, go crazy, dude. What are you talking about? This is our
I'm trying to even think.
imaginations.
I don't even know what my wild. Let me look what I have over here. I think wildest dreams would be, like, Bloodborne 2.
Bloodborne 2
Yeah.
before a remaster or like a
Yeah, yeah,
upgrade.
yeah, yeah. I don't think they'll do like a remake, so I think they'll do 2, and then something they could do
You
to get hyped
madman.
is like either do it like well, I guess it's already on the PS Plus collection, but like do the official patch for like 60 frames per second. Honestly, I think the hardcore fans would be happy with just the 60 frame per second patch and then just the second game. I
Yeah,
don't think that it necessarily needs the full remake treatment yet.
gotcha. Okay, so I'm gonna go through mine real fast. I think Horizon is gonna come out this year. I think PlayStation has been waiting for certain dates from other people to kind of solidify that date, and those people are not giving their dates because I think they're also waiting for each other to come up with their dates. So I think Horizon might come out this year. So what I would love to believe is if PSX to start off with God of War, just go strong, dude. Just show off. Like it doesn't even have to be like we'll go crazy over a 30-second little CGI trailer or something.
Just Kratos walking, like,
Mm.
whoa, what does it mean? People picking it apart.
Exactly. And then I would love for it to end where black screen, we hear the sound of like a blizzard, and then you just hear the codec and you just hear this is Snake. And then that's the end of it. And blue point, boom,
Yeah.
blue
Yeah.
point symbol, boom, we're done. Let's go. Wrap it up, boys. Look, PlayStation 1 2021. But that's my dream. I don't know if they're working on it, but I would
Yeah.
love for them to be working on a Metal Gear Solid remake.
I have a crazy modifier to your God of War prediction.
Give it to me.
Okay.
Give it
Are
to
you
me.
ready for this?
I think I
So
am.
they're going to start out like they did the last, the God of War announcement. So they're going to do the full orchestra, and they're going to be doing a huge piece, and then they're going to show off Atreus first, and everyone's going to be like, "Oh yeah." And then you'll hear a deep voice, and the camera will turn, and it'll actually be Thor, and we'll be wondering, "Why is Atreus hanging out with Thor?" And then they just cut out, and
Oh,
then
dude.
we have to wait and see.
That's such a
Why
great
would
idea.
Atreus be hanging out with
Why would
Thor?
you
Where's
say Thor, dude?
Kratos?
That's a spoiler. How dare you? I'm gonna kick you from this call now.
Yeah, you
Okay.
could flash something in ahead, spoiler coming up.